In 1975, in the spring, I was 30 years old. My name then was Frances Baker. I shared a flat, an apartment in North London with two friends, and I worked at a school in a deprived area of South London as a teacher social worker. It was a pretty stressful job, It was a pretty stressful job, but it was often rewarding and it was very interesting. I had great colleagues and lots of good friends. My parents and two younger sisters also lived in London in different neighborhoods, and we saw each other quite frequently. One evening in May, two friends and I from school, we went to a country pub and we started talking about our underperforming love lives. And I said, I never meet anybody unless I go on holiday. That's vacation. And Wendy said, okay, let's go on holiday. So we decided to go to Amsterdam, which even in those days when there was no train under the English Channel was not difficult to get to. We took the ferry to the port of Amsterdam, and then we got the bus into the city. And I was saying, I am going to see all the museums, I'm going to see everything there is to see in Amsterdam, the Rijksmuseum, the Van Gogh Museum, the Anne Frank House. And I started laughing when they said, oh, we're going to meet guys. Well, the first evening we were there, we went to a Malaysian restaurant. Malaya used to be a colony of a Dutch colony. And we had what was then a traditional rice tafel, which is a meal consisting of lots of tiny little dishes like chicken satay with peanut sauce, and everything goes with rice. So we were seated at a table with another person, which is not uncommon there. He turned out to be a Greek, very charming Greek, who was based in Amsterdam as an agent for Olympic Airlines. And he was very attracted to my friend Wendy, who was extremely well endowed. After the meal, he asked, would you like to go somewhere? And the waiter suggested that we go to the Blue Note. That's the same name as the famous club that was once in Chicago. And that club turned out to be a place for dancing and drinks, and the Dutch favorite, which is Geneva, which is gin to us. Well, at a certain point, the music stopped, and a very scantily dressed young lady came in with a rubber glove, an inflated rubber glove. And she started doing what I called a choreographed strip without actually taking any clothes off. And I thought she probably had intended to be a professional dancer at one time, but this was her best shot. Most of the audience was pretty surprised and very silent, which is what we in England call gobsmacked. Two people in the audience were laughing, not mockery, but amusement. And when she finished her set, the young man who had been laughing asked me, the other laugher, to dance. Well, we danced and talked for quite a long time, and we were very attracted to each other, and we left together and arranged to meet my two friends the next morning. He was David Locks. He was a Chicagoan, an American, and he had just opened up his own solo law practice in Chicago. It was his first trip to Europe, and he had planned to travel with a friend of his who was a doctor in the army stationed in Germany. Those were still Vietnam days. David decided to travel on his own, and he had already been to London and Paris when he got to Amsterdam. There is some other line that I have here, but I will get to it. We spent most of that week together. Actually, we spent all of that week together. and we visited all of the places on our bucket list for sites in Amsterdam. The best day that I remember is when we went on a train to the small town of Haarlem with 2 A's, and we went to the Frans Hals Museum. And Frans Hals was a contemporary of Rembrandt, and his most famous painting is The Laughing Cavalier, which was kind of ironic. After the museum, we sat in the garden there, and we sat for a very long time, and we talked about ourselves and our lives and our families. And then the week was over, and we said a regretful farewell with no plans and no commitments. He went back to his law office in Chicago, and I went back to my life in London. And then the phone started ringing in the middle of the night. He had completely forgotten about the time difference. He wanted me to come to Chicago, and I eventually agreed after he persisted. I agreed to come for 2 weeks in my summer vacation. I said if we didn't click, if there was nothing between us at the end of 2 weeks, I was going to visit some friends in Pennsylvania and go back to London. I had a long-distance relationship many years before that, and there was no way I was going to go through that misery all over again. So I hedged my bets, and I bought gifts for my friends' children in Philadelphia, thinking that that's where I would be going. The first day that I arrived in Chicago, we went to we went to a pancake restaurant, and David asked me to marry him right there. And I said, give me a minute, give us some time, let's just see how we go, and let's not talk about it. At the end of that week, we decided to get married. I had arrived in Chicago on July the 25th, and on August the 15th, we were married. Oh my God. We had a very small ceremony at a rabbi's house in Skokie, and there were 12 people, and we went to a restaurant to celebrate. His parents were there, some friends, and his brother and sister-in-law very kindly and nobly drove up from St. Louis with their 5-year-old daughter Becky, who was my bridesmaid, and their 1-month-old son Danny, who is here tonight. Well, my parents in London were very surprised, but they were extremely encouraging, generous, and I know that they thought it was about time I got married. My sisters, on the other hand, were furious. They thought it was much too sudden, it was much too far away, they didn't want me to live far away, and there was not going to be any party. 2 weeks later, I went back to London to give notice at my job and to find a tenant for my apartment. My principal was marvelous. There was no hassle, and all of my colleagues were extremely supportive and very happy for me. And one of my students, I think he was about 11, he heard that I was going to leave to go to America. He said, "Oh, miss, you're going to be driving in a big fancy car and you're going to be dripping in jewels." So you see me now. And my colleagues gave me a very large farewell card. Everybody signed their names. And Wendy and Charlotte, who were the 2 friends that I had abandoned in Amsterdam, they wrote, "Next time we go on holiday, we're going to do as you do and not as you say." Now, my husband David died 4 years ago, but throughout our 45 years of marriage, we were really sustained by that meeting and our instant connection. And 3 songs, which some of you might recognize and even know, just tell our story. One of them is Shall We Dance from The King and I. Then there's Strangers in the Night by Frank Sinatra. And of course, Some Enchanted Evening from South Pacific. Thank you very much.